Let me also make sure. My mod view is open. You hear the printer cooking? I'm printing the Raven Shield, I told you. I'm printing a small version of it just to see if I can get the print, like, get it perfect. And if I get that small one perfect, then the big jaunt's coming with the paint. It's gonna get you the paint. The most lit prints.
Unfortunately, things.
Let me go ahead and unfollow that shit real quick. Go ahead and unfollow. Hit the unfollow. Yeah, what the fuck? Let me go ahead and hit the unfollow real quick. Alright. I'm co-streaming with Universal Discourse. Let me go ahead and jump in with her. Hey,
Are you sure?
sorry I'm late.
Hey, Emma. We're talking about Arun and his hate rage.
Oh, man.
If y'all don't mind, I know Globus is good, and also I've been around Twitch and seen some certain particular weird things, and I'd like to go over there and talk with him and see about his settings.
Word.
Because the Chud that we're bothered with is make it looks like there's more than there are. And y'all know how in Chatterino you can be sitting in multiple chat rooms at the same time?
Yep.
That's how he's doing it.
Yeah.
You get it? Also, as a Reddit moderator, he has one of those highfalutin hoity-toity translators at his disposal, because on Reddit, if you're trying to moderate and they use a foreign language, right? You have to know what they're saying. So that's a Reddit moderator's tool.
Interesting.
But that's how he's able to spit these things out so quickly. He's not typing them at all. He's posting them by auto posting. He's auto posting them into Chatterino chats. That way he can be in the room and appear to be innocent. We've seen all this before. The last 2 years, we've seen everything they've done. It's the same 23 centimeter chat anyway. But, so, they like to stir up drama. They create that kind of drama and infighting and toxicity because it's lively, right? Good for business, as they say. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But anyway, I hope I'll sit with him and talk. So how are you doing? Did you get your smoke and your what did you drink? Say Mountain Dew?
Yeah, I got this Mountain Dew, this mango Mountain Dew. See what it's just to see what it tastes like. I'm trying to stop drinking soda, so I'm saying putting
Mm,
all of the sodas before I go on my water kick. Cause now that I'm not working like a very labor intensive job, I'm gonna need to like actually pay
hmm
attention to my diet and stuff.
I was just thinking that myself today. I went to put on my trousers and I was like, what the fuck? Like your calves are nice and, solid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's good, but where did these extra you know, 3 inches come from? Yeah, my fat ass, that's where it came from. So I'm like, Now I'm eating the pizza I promised you. See, I bought it for y'all. See, y'all see? No. Um, okay, I'm just memeing really badly. So the reason I
Memes.
said memes, I can get really stupid. I totally own that.
Same.
Just you too? We should go off in a game one time. That would be funny.
I don't.
The reason I said, hey, Fran, maybe you should call Endless and find out if he wants to talk about the building of blackness in Jamaica, because I found slave registries. Mm. So I'm gonna straight up just start by um going into these things, um, and seeing if we can match it with, your own knowledge and experience. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trace the construction of blackness, literally, the word itself. Find when it was born and how it evolved. And these registries give it a birthday, including its ancestry, its nationality, its gender, and its color, and its age, right? With a few helpful other comments. And it's all in these registries.
Yo, you too, Kuma.
And I want you to see if your concept of blackness, right, resonates with this construction. I want to see if
No,
your experience
no
of blackness,
spoilers.
if your experience of blackness matches the build. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the build. Blackness was built.
What's
Everybody
that?
likes to say
18,
social con
1813. We're done.
they
I'm
like to say
just.
social construction. It was built. The word didn't the word had to be born. Um, and that took a minute because you had a whole lot of people at the table owning slaves. They didn't all see color the same way. I'm pretty sure the slaves did. Right.
Right.
But these people who made the label for the brand, they did not all see color the same way at all. We had France, we had Portugal, we had the Dutch, we had the English, and we had Spain. Okay. So what do you know about the slave registries?
I haven't seen. I honestly haven't seen them a whole bunch. I've seen parts of like the Dawes rolls and stuff just from like goofy stuff like Ancestry.com. But I haven't seen a whole lot of this yet. I'm actually gonna pull you up on my stream as well. Give me a sec.
Ancestry.com has the archives. There's also another archive site, but I I don't know if that costs anything or not. But all right, so I've got a window capture here, right? All right, if you can see it, can you see it
I can
on
see.
stream?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I need to make this bigger, right? Here it is. Mm. Colonial dependencies, meaning dependents,
What up,
children,
Global
wives,
Sailor?
slave registers. 1813 to 1834 for a woman named Elizabeth Webster. Can you see? You should be able to see clearly the type of script that they use to make their entrances
Oh
and
yeah,
entries. All right.
the cursive. Yeah.
Yeah, really beautiful, very French. Um, there should be 5 column. Two wide ones on the ends and three smaller ones in the middle. If you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a close-up of a larger form. There are no lines, there are only sections. Okay. This document had even had a document number. This was something very similar to a cargo manifesto.
Okay.
All right.
I was
It
just about to
said,
say that. Just
mhm.
from my recent job, it looked very similar to a cargo manifest. But yeah.
And a cargo manifest as it has arrived is going to have two columns, which is going to say what surplus and capital loss, capital gain, capital loss, correct?
Yeah, more or less, something like that.
Something like that. Damaged inventory.
Yeah,
Did it?
yeah,
I had
damages and
right.
stuff, damage weights and
100
dams.
unit, 100 units.
Yeah, yep, yep,
When this was signed, 98 remained. The losses were due to, and then you fill in the blank, right?
yep.
Okay. Well, you can't see that, but that is exactly what this is. So it's similar to a manifest. Sorry, manifesto. Sorry, manifest. It's similar to a shipping invoice, right? It's very similar to a census form. Not really. This is also the form that was used for capital gains and capital losses in that time.
Interesting.
Right. Now, the script in these registries was remains for the 30 years that I looked at Jamaica. It remains nearly identical. I find it really hard to believe that the same person wrote this shit out for 30 years. However, so the handwriting for this was trained and specialized, and a very rather prestigious person, a court reporter, the guy in the county clerk's office, so to speak, had the big honor of curly chewing his C's and his N's and making racism look so beautiful. Look at that. Look at the
Right.
curls, the perfect slope, the arabesque, how even and regular. The pressure of the nib. There's no splotches. My goodness, racism must have been terribly potent back then. Look at the care. All right. So what I'd like you to see, if you can, and I know this is literally hard to see, are you able to try to make out any of these entries?
I can make out almost all of them. I would say probably.
Okay. Some people can't read cursive at all. Also, this is quite old and squishy.
Yeah, it's yeah.
So, okay, Mr. Cemetery, sir, uh, can you find a 21-year-old Negro in this document whose name was William?
Yep. Second one from the top.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what his nationality was?
I'm guessing would that be what the Creole is for the nationality?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
And what about his friend Norman and Francis? What were their nationalities?
African. So I guess
They
does
were
that
African.
that I guess that delineates whether they're foreign or domestic slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, technically, they were all foreign,
Well,
but
yeah.
mhm. And can you tell me, Mr. Cemetery, what color were William, Norman, and Francis?
They were all three Negroes.
And what color is Negro?
Negro would be black, or dark
Uh-huh.
skinned, or copper skinned.
Uh-huh. What about James Taylor down here? A 7-year-old Creole boy. What color was he?
Mulatto, it says.
Mm-hmm. What color do you suppose that was?
If I had to guess, I would say probably slave owner and slave. So,
White and black.
yeah.
Correct. He was half black, half white.
Yeah, half.
He was actually half black, half white. Like one parent white, one parent black.
Right.
They lumped everybody, any other color, all up in there. It didn't make no difference.
Yeah.
Okay, um, these are registers 1813, right? So in 1813, if you were living in Jamaica, can you tell me what your color would be?
Probably darker skinned, copper skinned, one might say.
According to the register,
Right.
what color would you be?
I would be Negro.
You're a Negro. You don't have to give your age. Could you,
I'm Norman's age.
your Norman's age, could you guess at what you think you're not based on your own family history, what nationality do you think you would have had in 1813?
Probably, I would say probably Creole.
So that would mean you were from either Haiti or from New Orleans.
Mm.
Okay. So in your family history in 1813, y'all was already in Fat City holding a Mardi Gras
Well,
or
my
something.
grandmother, I'm not sure entirely about that. My grandmother's from Mississippi, from Jackson,
Oh,
Mississippi, actually.
oh yeah, she definitely would have been. She
Yeah.
straight up would have been down there. She'd have been Mardi Gras Mambo.
Yeah, she told me about going to see like BB King for 35 cents and stuff like that. It's pretty fucking cool.
35 cents at the cross. I know exactly where she saw him too. Exactly. Who in their right mind would charge 35 cents for that man? You know what I'm saying? You would pay 35 cents to see BB King?
BB King was
What an insult. But that
uh
was all anybody had. That's what I'm saying.
true.
And I know the juke joint he played in wasn't exactly a juke joint, but and I know where he played.
I was gonna
35
say
cent was big money back then.
I was gonna say that, and also I'm biased because I'm punk, so I come from like the DIY mindset of like, and maybe I'm unique in that aspect as well. But like, I think everything should be free unless it's like merchandise, like T-shirts or something like that. Like, I don't care. You listen to my music, come to my shows and stuff for free.
I mean, except if that's how you put gas in your tank to get down the road because you couldn't stay in a hotel because of your color.
True.
Mm,
Exactly.
okay. Let's talk about exploitation of labor, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to talk a little bit about America's peculiar obsession with blackness and its particular brand of slavery. But it started here. One thing you notice, Negro, Mulatto, Creole, African, there's two nations, two, you almost want to call this blood quantum, right? Do you see the names? Yes, you see the names.
Yep. Yep.
Can you read those names to
Yep.
me?
Just
I'm
read.
getting all edgy because that's how we do.
Just
Sorry.
the list of just read them off.
Try to read them off on the left.
All right, I see Edmund, William, Norman, Francis, Jack. What's that?
Kent.
Kent. Okay. Benjamin, Robert, Henry, Sam, William Hornsby, Richard, James Taylor. Was that Emily?
That says females.
Females. Okay. And then Elizabeth Smith, Elizabeth Webster,
That's who
and
this page is named for. Correct. You can see the other one?
the bottom one something Smith. It's an M.A. something. Your
Mary Smith. Mary Smith.
okay, yeah, the 8 ball's blocking it.
Yep. Um, over here on the right, the far right, this is where they put remarks. Okay. Um, can you tell me, uh, there are 1, 2, 3, 6 boys. Can you tell me the names of their mothers?
Kitty and Lucy.
Do they have fathers?
It would not appear as though they do.
Nope.
They would appear, dare I say, fatherless.
Appears. So let's begin to speculate, and let's see how racist everybody actually is, or how blind they actually are.
The first son of Kitty is
So
2 years old, and the second one is 1 year old. Wow.
it's 1 year old. So the big generous plantation owner, William Morris, by the way, himself and his family, William Morris Spence actually was his name. It meant somebody who worked in a pantry, steward, right? Happens to be a major surname in Jamaica, among Black Jamaicans today, as a result of, So, William Morris plantations. There were something like 860 in Jamaica. 1/10 of the number of plantations in Haiti and Dominican Republic. There were 8,000 plantations over there. The free people of color population was anywhere between 20 and 40,000, depending on how many people died over the winter, right?
Yeah.
Free people of color in Jamaica, not so much, okay? Background story is Binks, great, right? Comes over with the William Morris Spence family estate because the Haitian slave rebellion was kicking up, and they fled to Jamaica, bought the land, and reestablished. Okay. They also accepted a lot of refugees. They also took a lot of slaves off people's hands when they had to unload their household servant, and folded their plantations because most of them were on fire at that point anyway.
Yeah.
Terrified New Orleans. It outraged France because France was so embarrassed by the debauchery and brutality of plantation owners in its own colony that it actually armed a faction of free people who were very dark, and they turned, instead of suppressing the enslaved Black people, they joined them, and that's what started it. France said literally, I have no idea how they got those weapons. We didn't know anything about that. They totally empowered them to do that. And then they abolish slavery, and they give citizenship, autonomy, and sovereignty, and then even equal rights to women, all in one fell swoop.
Nice.
Right? So that rebellion was something. Right? Before that, you had Cujo leading the first Maroon Wars. So long, hard fought. Right? Jamaica, different. Okay. Haiti and Dominican Republic occupied for something like 6,000 years before colonization.
Damn.
Jamaica was declared to have been empty. There wasn't anybody there. Well, we know that's bullshit, okay?
Right.
But that's what they said. Okay, so there's a backdrop to this. America is America by now, but it's only barely America, right? It's just beginning to be, it sort of stopped being English in the late 1700s. They diverged. America's chattel slavery was unlike any other in history.
Right.
Bona fide, legit, unlike any other in history. The people who got charters to open plantations in the South were not at all like the French, who had charters and or whatever you call them, settle documents that said they could settle their charters, or the British or the Dutch. You know, they were more like the Spanish, more like the Portuguese. Um, but enslaved people in the U.S. slaves had clothes. They could read and write and stuff. They were considered, sometimes respected among the community up until a point. It was where, we all just worked alongside each other. Except the fact that you're a slave and I'm not. But anyway,
Right.
okay. Up until that rebellion happens. And then they double down and become the boogeyman, the black dog, the taskmasters, the lynching, the flogging, the gross,
Right.
the gross. They double down, and they're going to teach their little slaves a lesson, right? So that's not happening here, right? France went, what are we going to do? Here's Europe. What are you going to do about those rebellious slaves? I mean, you need to do something. And France says, yes, we'll abolish slavery. Problem solved. Fuck off. Took England in a minute, and the U.S. is still unwilling to let that shit go to this day. That is the backdrop and up to today. But up to today, here are 4 young sons of Lucy, 2 young sons, baby boys of Kitty. A couple of things that tie today and then together. Where did they get their names? Where do you suppose they got their names?
I would imagine the person who owned them named them.
Owned them, named them, regardless of what their name was, regardless of how many names they had before. Many
Right.
times those extra names were recorded. In this case, we don't have that. Lucy and Kitty, being mothers, could give them names like this. But in order to make it official, the owner had to come and have it registered into the book, into his inventory. Okay. So we understand that Kitty and Lucy's doing well. Lucy's doing well. Look at her 4 children, boys. Look at Kitty coming in a close second. Brand new baby. She just got started. She started young. That's fine. But what about Richard and James Taylor?
Doesn't say underneath of them.
Mm-hmm. Because their parents weren't owned by the Spences. That means the Spences bought them off the slave block at that age. They were 8 and 7 when they were sold into slavery.
Wow.
Actually, that whole trip took a while. They were probably 5 and 6. So why bother writing down their mother's name? We'll never know what happened to their mother. Mothers, we don't know. We'd have to ask Lucy and Kitty. Okay. Down here, though, we see Miss Elizabeth Webster, for whom this register was, whose name is recorded in this register. What is the color of Elizabeth Webster?
Mulatto.
She's a mulatto, which means she's...
Mixed black and white.
But what do you suppose her actual color of her skin was?
Probably, it could be anything, honestly. But I would imagine maybe like copper skinned, like lighter skinned.
And it could be, or she could be raven black as well. But the fact of it is that she was a no mulatto, in other words.
Right.
Although she is a slave, right, her father was white. And we know her father was white. It's quite simple. Elizabeth is the daughter of somebody. So who was her mother?
Elizabeth Smith.
The only way Elizabeth Smith would be entered in the inventory as the bitch with the litter is that Elizabeth Smith was owned
Right.
by the Spences. So she was born a slave, even though her father was white. We'll also never know who her father was. Hmm. She's 35. Okay. It looks like mother and daughter together, right?
Right.
Her mother is the top for her. Elizabeth Smith, she's 54. Her mother was 19 when she had Elizabeth. That's not too bad. Her mother was what color?
Does it say?
Mm-hmm.
I can't see. It's cut off.
Negro.
Negro.
Elizabeth Smith
Oh,
was
Elizabeth Smith. Oh,
Negro.
okay. I see right above. I'm silly. Yeah, she was a Negro. Yeah.
She would be Negro. Okay. It doesn't say what color Negro, it just said Negro.
Right.
Um, and we don't know again who Webster's father was. Okay. Okay. Nowhere in here do you see the word black.
Right.
Don't you think that's yeah, it's a little surprising, isn't it?
No, not for the time.
Not immediately surprising, right? The fact that they designate Creole from African, well, look at the national politics. Maybe not so surprising.
Yeah.
Trouble is, Creole tells us that it's the Creole is from a French colony, and African is captured, enslaved, and shipped. So an African wasn't born in Jamaica, wasn't born in New Orleans, wasn't born in Haiti. So he is fresh off the boat, where the Creoles would have been hanging around since evidently it says something like 1494.
Sheesh.
They've been around a while. All right, there we got that. There's another designation we don't quite see yet. This is the beginning of the construction or building of blackness. But how come we build blackness when we don't even have the word? Why don't we have the word black? We've got mulatto. What are these two words referring to?
Skin color, but more so social station as dictated by skin color.
They're referring to pedigree,
Yeah.
lineage.
Right.
We describe animals this way. I'd like the black and tan, right?
Right.
Dog with black and tan colors. You can have a tan shepherd, black Doberman.
Right.
You can have a black and tan mixed beagle, hound comes in black and tan, or you can have white, blue color words, right? Um, okay. Since in husbandry, it's the mother that they used for the breeding, right? The pedigree is going to follow the mother's line because the mother is going to breed to many, many different men. So, what is the point of tracking the men?
Yeah.
In husbandry, you follow the mother's line. You know? And then you got to
Yeah.
take pains to make sure you know whose whelp shows up, as they call it. Okay.
Yeah.
So it may not be perfectly obvious right now, but these are the markings, the same markings used on chattel means, including animal, livestock. These are the same type of marks and designators, exactly the same, used for beasts of burden, following exactly the same line, the mother. So this is human husbandry, the practice of husbandry on human beings. Not kind of, but actual.
Oh yeah.
So we cannot imagine that Lucy fell in love with old Sam and they jumped a broom and ran off, exchanged wedding vows, kissy, 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 had some wedding rings, and had their happy little children on Master's plantation, like you see in movies. They keep trying to show you that shit in movies.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like, no,
bullshit.
no, no. There's, from the get-go, Africans brought here, black people brought here, not even being called black yet, had the whole baby daddy, baby mama story. They had the whole absentee father. And one of the first questions I was asking to Bink was, it's 1813, right? You are a most likely Creole slave. You speak French, right? You have a first and a last name. In some cases, William Hornsby. Okay, you know, who got a last name. Now we know that somebody was named Hornsby.
Right.
The other three sons don't inherit that last name. We guess what? Those have different fathers. So here we go. What would being a black man have meant to William when he hit 16? When he wasn't allowed to have the same anything that all other men around him were. He didn't have the same access to women. He didn't have the right clothes. He
Yo,
didn't have the same
non-smoker, thanks for the
education.
raid.
He was not allowed the same responsibilities. And he was also not allowed to have an influence on his own child. He could not marry a woman he would fall in love with. He could not do these things. What do you suppose
Thank
his
you for the follow.
concept of being a black man was? Because he grew up this way. And every black man around him was the same.
Got to be very difficult to have a decent conception of being a black man under those conditions.
I think we're gonna have to try because a lot of people just don't understand what is blackness, what is redness. They don't
Right.
understand it because they can't figure out how it was constructed, and they can't conceive of not having the privilege they claim they lack.
Because they've never had to go through life being racialized or part of a marginalized community.
No one's ever been a slave,
Thank you.
not today.
Right.
And as hard as we think we have it, we've never been a slave.
Right.
We've never born up in a culture of slave. We don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But let's use speculative fiction like Glow was like. Let's see if we can come close. Let's try to imagine. And especially now in your case, you said your color, you would be Negro because
Yeah.
you're dark skinned. So let's just take a situation where William, who has a father's name, Hornsby. Now he's owned, just like father owns their son. He's got somebody behind him. But it looks like is that Jason above him?
Sam.
Sam. Sam, his brother Sam, doesn't have a daddy. Let's put it that way. He doesn't have a daddy because he doesn't have a daddy name. He ain't owned by nobody. That's not good. So these little boys, their first concept of value was whether or not they were owned. Because it entitled them, maybe, to the last name at least.
Yeah.
My daddy gave me a name and he walked away. So how you suppose? Do you suppose Sam was terribly jealous of William?
Maybe. Or it could be more of a curse than a gift at times.
So we wonder that maybe that William Hornsby, who was 6 years old and had a daddy name, was he treated any differently, do you suppose?
I would imagine so, especially if they were owned by the person who he got his name from.
Uh-huh. Um, Hornsby. No. He didn't. The plantation owner here, that is not any of the family names at all. So he got that name from the actual, the other guy,
Okay.
baby daddy,
Previous
number two.
owner, I guess.
Who would have been the previous owner, and in fact, most likely would have been the previous owner of Lucy herself,
Yeah.
right? So we're talking about pedigree here. This is called breeding. This is called husbandry. Okay. We're not entirely sure what color Lucy was, but we're gonna have to guess. She might have been Creole, most likely. Only because obviously her sons are Creole, and she
Yeah.
couldn't have that status if without that. But although William Hornsby says he says Negro, she's not mulatto, right? Well, if Lucy's Creole and her son is Negro, Lucy's Negro because Lucy's partner here with William was white,
Yeah.
but yet he's a Negro, not a mulatto. So it starts with this construction is tricky. How can he be having an owner's last name, still be Negro, his mommy be Negro, she's Creole, he's Creole, right? What are we looking at here? How do you trace a person's lineage when it's a mess like this? What do you suppose is the answer there? How could he have ended up with that last name? Because it's an owner's name, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
An owner is white. So how come he's not a mulatto?
Too dark.
Could have been if he were too dark. It could have been that Hornsby owned his father as well.
That true. I didn't
Oh,
even
now
think
look at
about that.
that. Right, we don't think about that. Because that's not conceivable today. If Hornsby owned his father and he owned his mother, what was William's father feeling when his son was born to the son he should have had, if you see what I mean, was born to this owner?
Yeah.
When he lost his access to Lucy, his rights to Lucy, and all rights to his son.
Yeah.
They were Lucy and her children were sold off on the block away from their father. You know. Hi, Talorx. Is that your friend?
A
Hi.
Teleworks.
Hey, I gotta say my security settings might be a little goofy, but if you authenticate your phone, your email, whatever you gotta do, you can go ahead and chat in here. This is a heavy. You're gonna want this conversation if you can. I got it. Whoa, Encom, thank you. I got a Is that endless? He's. Ooh, you have a little orbiter. Is that endless? No, it's a slave register. How could you mistake endless for a slave register? I don't see endless on here. I gotta turn my lights on. I realized nighttime got dark over here. Hold on.
Yeah,
Here we go.
I turned my lights on at some point like 3 p.m. or something and just left them on so I wouldn't have to get up and turn them on when it got dark.
Oh man, that's good thinking. That's great thinking. I had to turn them off during the day because it's too bright and I'll wash out completely. But
Oh damn.
okay, I hope you guys want to have this conversation and nobody's stuck not being able to verify. If you go ahead
What
and
up,
verify, you'll
Globus?
be able to chat. Hey, Globus. Everybody's gonna follow your ass now. You know that, right? See, that's why I do the shout outs with clips. I did that specifically because I can't describe y'all better than your own clip can.
True.
Okay, so we're looking at some tricky business here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Who is the mystery of the baby daddy? Okay. This is 2022. Um you take a lot of black families today. Um is it still a stereotype of the single black mother? Is that a
Yeah.
stereotype or is that a reality?
A little of both.
Okay. Um but it's
It's a bad
definitely
stereotype, but it's due when it happens. A lot of the time, it's due to the consequences of the prison industrial complex and all
otherwise
that's
known as slavery,
right. Yeah, slavery.
where they took a man's rights away to his own son and denied him access to his wife. You calling that slavery?
Right.
Yeah, I thought you said prison, but I heard slavery.
Same deal.
Um,
Forced labor.
I also heard 1813. Um, Same shit, different year.
Yep.
That's what I heard. I do not see any difference.
Yeah. There's not
But I
really a
mean, I
difference.
we know it's still going on today. But until I cracked these bad boys open and ran the numbers, saw the numbers for myself, I didn't know that there really is no difference. I hadn't been able to see exactly how this was done, but I worked with horses, dogs, okay, etc. I know husbandry when I see it.
Right.
That's what this is. Um, okay. So this is right about 1813. You getting a hang for this thing. You're like, okay, okay, okay. You're getting how it reads, how it's written, right? We got a few unusual facts. We have the fact that uh we have something here on the next page over. John, Tom, Cato, James, Sammy, um, Frem, Will, Adam, and Bristol came in on this pilot, if you will.
Hmm.
Okay, they didn't buy any women this time. We see that these are Negro color. They're
That's their age in the
between
middle.
the between the ages of 30 and 40. Are surprisingly old.
Hmm.
They're all African. They were express ordered. They were looked over, inspected. It took them a minute for the shipment to arrive, where we do not know whether they planned to name them in advance because these plantation owners seemed to have a penchant for, they had quite this humor. They had quite the sense of humor. They were incredibly creative with these fucked up names. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll give you
I
some
can turn
prime
followers only
samples.
chat off.
But we do know they were express ordered in advance. We also know that the women purchased exactly as many slaves as the men. They also have two instances where young girls, the age of 7, wanted playmates and were walked to the slave blocks to inspect their friends and hand the money over. So the purchase was in her 7-year-old name, 10-year-old name. So they taught their children how to buy slaves as well.
That's pretty wild.
That's only 2 instances, and that's only 1 plantation. I mean, the little companions, usually you couldn't separate them. They were raised identically, like dolls, and you couldn't separate them. There's a whole reality for black women inside this story.
Yeah.
And New Orleans, to this day, we have what we call the baby dolls. Living dolls. They're coquettes, is what we call them. They dress in baby doll clothes. The huge hats and the cute skirts and the white stockings. And
That sounds kind of horrifying, I won't lie.
Oh, no, that's where they taking that shit back. They're owning that shit. You know what I'm talking about? It was a quadroon thing. Right?
Okay.
All right, but yeah, it does. It's not a yeah. It's a reminder.
I was gonna say I immediately thought of something from what was it, Lovecraft Country, and it made sense. Yeah.
Exactly. So on this grand day, now here it is, 1817. Somebody went down and bought themselves 9 African men, ages 30 to 40. They weren't Creole. They hadn't grown up in these territories. They were off the boat. How they even knew their ages? How do you suppose they would have known their ages?
By either previous manifest or like asking them.
Previous manifest. Whoever yanked these fellows, it was either in Akan, Ghana, okay, or South Africa. As they were loaded onto the boats, I'm not sure what you'd call the freight master, the quartermaster, whoever had that responsibility, they could speak each other's languages, and they simply asked him his age. They were asked their age before they came over. By the time they got here, they were 1, 2, 3 years younger or older, give or take. They're all even numbers, if you noticed. Exactly 30, exactly 40. Not likely. Okay. That is the middle of these men's life. They're fairly well in their prime, and they're African, and they can only have come from 2 places. Right? Not Congo, but Gold Coast or South Africa, because those were the only ports established along the rum route, the rum runner route, or the molasses route, sometimes they. So this is in the days of rum. This is in the rum trade, right? You damn well know, you know, Osa, all right, from South Africa was named fucking Adam, okay? Or Bristol, okay? I'm just saying, all right? So, they loved to name these people. And then that's where you see in Alex Haley's Roots, where the guy's cracking that thing and telling him, your name is Toby. Say it. Okay. Well, there was a brief delay in delivering slaves because that bit was done to them before they were delivered. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like dehumanizing them. Yeah.
Getting them to say this name.
Yep.
Tell him your name. When he meets you, tell him your name. Whack. Your name is Whack. Your name is... These poor men.
Yeah.
And they were just standing there going, and here came the old master going to pick them up, right? Looking all clean and spiffy, and got that little 7-year-old with her big whatever chew toy, whatever she's holding on to, her little pinafore, her little perfectly white socks, and her little perfectly curled hair. Know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Looking at them all, and here's these 30, 45-year-old grown-ass men standing there waiting, and oh, here they come from me. And they all jabbing each other going, what's your name? I forgot mine. What's mine? I don't know. You're Will. I'm Adam. It doesn't make any difference. Just tell him what he wants to know, right?
Right.
Here he came. He knew his own slaves because they would tell him their name. And those were the names that he decided on. Bristol, for instance. They would throw monkey wrenches like that in there to make sure that that was what they'd ordered. It's like DoorDash. They would check the package first. And then in the cart or whatever, then poof, off they went. They'd get there to discover, dozens, hundreds, who knows how many other African men and
Right.
women. Very few women. So the ratio here, we tried to look at it, of Africans, men to women is it's like, I don't know, 7-1, something like that.
Of men to women or women to men?
Of African men, 7 to African women, 1 is
Sheesh.
huge. Okay. Creole, ratio of Creole to African, predominantly Creole. Not African at all.
Right on.
Oh no, that's interesting, isn't it? Third thing we had to realize looking at cost of manifestos, or manifests, sorry. I've been on Twitter so long I can't even say the word without adding the O. Twitter don't fuck me up. Cost, $365 to $700 each. So I looked at this 7-year period from this family's purchasing habits, right? You know what I mean? I hacked into their Venmo. Okay, I'm looking at this. All right, what I'm looking at is, they were buying a lot of women with children. They were buying a lot of children. So the women with children and the children are a significant percentage. Because they knew that in the 7 years, by the time Cato here finally died, all right, of backbreaking work,
Right.
that 10-year-old boy, now 17, well, he was right about breeding. We found 2 instances, I'm not going to show you that, where the son was made to marry his mother so that she could have kids. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. Like, I know that exists and that was a thing, but yeah, that's rough.
Alrighty. So, slavery. We think of slavery, we go, okay. We don't ever think about husbandry. So here now we can finally go into, let's go into color. All right, this was 1813, something like that. And I think this is Ancestry has these. She was a resident in 1817. Samuel Spence was the name of slave owner. She was Elizabeth Webster was a 35-year-old woman. Her nationality was Creole, born approximately 1782, became a resident of Jamaica 1817 in Westmoreland.
Wow.
And she came from Haiti or New Orleans, but she was not from Jamaica. And this must have been important. Webster is one of the Spence family names. And here we have a Hornby. Okay. Okay. So here we got that. All right. This was Hornby. It's actually it is Hornsby. The S in the script then looks a lot like a G.
I figured as much.
Yeah, it's just orthography. All right, so we don't get too far. I want you to notice a few things. Can you see this page?
Yep, I'm looking at it.
How'd you like to name your son Oxford?
Oxford is a wild name. I don't think I can name my son Oxford.
How about this? If your mama was named Venus, wouldn't you want her to name you Apollo?
That sounds like it'd be pretty cool. I fuck with the name Mars, though. I think Mars would be pretty cool.
So the owners named these two. First, they bought Venus when she was 7, when she was old enough to breed.
Yikes.
They gave her a son, and they named him Apollo. Period. She couldn't read. She didn't know who Venus or Apollo was.
Yeah.
She was 7. This fella, Chance. Here's some other interesting facts. 13-year-old Creole, might as well have called him Gambit. Born about 1804. Residence, 1817. Hopefully in this thing you can see what the whole form actually is looking like. It's a inventory with a description of what was delivered, what was missing, what was gained, what was lost.
All the damages and everything. Wow.
All the damages of the cargo. You see, if I shrink it all the way back, you can at least see the layout.
Yeah, it looks very familiar.
Looks like a ledger, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like an ARAP, doesn't it? That's basically what it was. Okay. And we see that Chance, as they say, he is 17. In fact, Chance is a 70-year-old African Negro invalid.
I'm guessing that means he's too old to work.
He's injured,
Oh.
crippled, and yet they purchased him, 70 years of age.
Sure, he'd be useful in the house or something.
The women in Jamaica and the women in plantations in Tahiti, being French, doted on their slaves to embarrassing degrees.
Naturally.
And they couldn't bear to see the suffering. They couldn't bear to separate the brothers and sisters, the babies, the old people. This is what ultimately brought a lot of condemnation down on them, and what brought France's condemnation down on them, because that behavior was outrageous.
Yeah.
Okay, they were acting too much like royals. That's what they were saying. And I said, well, when these revolutions and rebellions happen, whatever happened to Chance? We don't know. We'll never know. He was, there are stories about him, and there are stories about the best one of all, and this was what really pissed France off. This woman had some cojones. All right. Two things. The Maroon Wars were led by a man named Cujo. Right? Cujo, like the dog Cujo.
Yep.
Led the Maroon Wars. They was trying for independence, right? In Haiti, right? That ends in 1791, 1801. Haiti is independent. 16 years later, Becky Spence decides to have a joke, buys herself a slave, and names him Cujo.
Wild.
So he was the source of ridicule and mockery, because it was as if they took out all their resentment on Cujo. Well, I always wondered if that's why Stephen King wrote the novel Cujo about the dog. You know?
Maybe. I think Cujo is just one of those names that's like, I'm sure he probably heard it and then didn't even realize where he heard it, but it was just like, that just sounds kind of menacing or something. I don't know.
I know he was fully versed in these, because in the Green Mile, the character's name is John Coffey, right?
Oh, yeah. That's
He says,
true. Never mind. I didn't even think about that.
He says John Coffey, only spelt different. John Cuffey. That's the entry in the slave registers. Coffee, only spelt differently. So I know Stephen King pulled from stories like this several times. Several times he has. He just hit it. He hit it. And, but yeah, that isn't even as good. And here we have from William Morris himself. He bought himself a slave out of Africa, and he called him Monkey.
Oh, wow. That's fucking ridiculous.
You can imagine. But the best one, I think, was when the woman bought a slave and she named him My Lord. So that, My Lord, would you bring my tea? My Lord, would you fluff my pillows? You know,
Of course.
that was a personal little ha-ha. And one of the best ones I loved, woman named Queen. 37. Let's take a look at this. Queen Hester. She came in with a woman named Bessie, who was an African woman. And in this entry, it says that Bessie, a Negro, 37-year-old, now that's got to be the right age because it's an odd number. 37-year-old woman, African woman named Bessie. Why wasn't she, when he reported his losses this year, he said that Bessie ran away 3 years ago. Bessie was never captured and Bessie was not killed.
Damn.
Later, in a cross-reference, Queen took off with her. And I just love the fact that this 37-year-old Creole woman and this 37-year-old African woman, Queen Bessie, that they took off running.
I said, fuck this, I'm out.
Neither were captured, neither was killed.
Nice.
I would love to know what happened to Miss Queen and Miss
Squad
Bessie.
W.
Hey. Anyway, just so you can just reminisce a little bit or get a little bit of interesting kind of, like, hey, there's a lot going on here. Okay. This one they named, of course, Tabby. Nice kitty. Fanny. Okay. Lookout. Right.
Wait a
Preto.
minute. That name,
These are names.
Urquhart. Joseph.
Urquhart.
That's one of my family's names.
Would you like to know who he was?
Sure.
He was one of my people, honey. He was 2 years old when they bought him. He had his father's name.
I might not be related to him, but that's one of the
And
names
he was Creole. And his race, his color, I'd like you to know, he was a quadroon. That's why he had his father's name, because the Frenchmen did not strike their names from their children's records. The English did. The white peoples did. French weren't considered white.
I was going to say Urquhart is Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Norman, to be specific, Norman.
Yep.
Exactly.
My family were from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Those Urquharts are from Alabama.
In recent times, right?
Yep.
But originally, for black folks to get this name, his mother did not take the father's name. The son was given his father's name properly. He was a quadroon, right? He was added to the registry by birth, actually, not bought, sorry. He was added to the registry by birth, but Maria Smith was owned, but he was a quadroon.
Okay.
All right, this made all the difference in the world to him. He would be given access to every single thing a French national would expect to be given access to. Full education, mentoring, apprenticeship, the finer things in life. He most likely had light-colored eyes. Okay. He would have been groomed, not enslaved. But he was still a quadroon. And that was going to stop him from not being able to walk down the street without having to duck his head in front of a white person. He would have still
Yeah,
known he wasn't white. Okay.
for sure.
Okay, for sure. He would have been laughed at by the much lighter-skinned women. The high yellow, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So here we see this extra term, quadroon. This is interesting. Negro, mulatto, quadroon.
That means
Quadroon is one.
one of your grandparents is black, and then octoroon is one of your great grandparents, right?
Yep. And maroon. Maroon is also like mulatto. Okay.
Right
So
on.
quadroon is 1/4. Mulatto is 1/2. Negro is 100%. And I'm not sure if it's on this page or not. There is the first and one of the very few times you find out what a BIPOC person was called. They were invented on these registries too in these 7 years. In these, say, 30 years. Call it 30 years. And what do you suppose a BIPOC person was called then?
Um, Probably some derogatory term, probably like Indian or something like that.
Sambo.
Sambo. Wow.
So that's where Little Black Sambo came from.
Wow.
Little Black Sambo was in blackface. You ever wonder why he was in blackface? It was, what do you mean? It's like, was he some other color? Yeah, he was. So Little Black Sambo was a BIPOC kid, Indian black with blackface on. Because after all, if you're any shade less than white, right, you black.
Basically.
Okay, so you see how the color coding begins? But we still only in, what year is this thing? About 1820? Residence 1820. Okay. Here's African. I'll try to find, I hope it's on one of these sheets. It's my fault I didn't quite mark that sheet, but this is really difficult to look at. You have quadroon, negro, mulatto, forget who it was, Sambo. You have four colors. And just to make sure you understand, this is the category. Color. Age. Gave you an option, African or Creole. If you weren't sure, you were going to pick whatever was closest to what you thought.
Okay.
This is remarks.
I guess that would be damages.
This is your mother, or any notation on who owns you. Maria Smith is his mother. Elizabeth Webster is his mother. Registered by RB, Tans, and Hammer. Yeti, and oh, this one's so hard. This one just can't be reading. Antino lies something. Registered by his mother, Antino. Antino was his mother, registered by so and so and so and so. Breeding pedigree paperwork. They were gained by birth, by purchase, by trading, by inheritance. They were, the word is, decrease and cause thereof. They were decreased by death and by running away.
I've
Or by
seen
being sold out.
one of my my great great grandfather was listed as an item in someone's will as something to inherit.
Bequeathment, yeah.
Yeah.
They were bequeathed. Okay, in this same year, I cannot find exactly which document I was going to show this. In this same year, not too far, who do we got? Anybody watching? No, you guys.
Hey, shout out to Bewitched Spirit.
Hi, Bewitched Spirit. We're talking about heavy duty. This is heavy duty. There was Lookout. Okay. I'm gonna still try to find it. It is in, I believe, 1920. Hey. They're chopping away. Here he is. Oh, and of course, the forever popular, a slave named Ned. Yeah, no kidding. A just 39 years old Creole male. His name was My Lord. He was bought and owned by Miss Sarah Spence. Incredible. My Lord. Creole. Now here we go. A Creole Negro. Leah was his mother, and Leah was owned. Cicely comes up later, is the mother of Ned. And you hear that, you ever see the black movies with somebody, Cicely Tyson, and somebody named Old Ned? Swear to God. They come straight out of these books. Because they were saying this is most likely a name that he would have had. I think it's in this year. Or let me see exactly when this happens. The year that 1820. In 1820, I'm not sure what's record. For the very first time, you ready? Guess what was invented?
What's that?
The word black.
Interesting.
As a color of human being. This word had never been used or entered anywhere.
Because before we were just Negro or copper-skinned or mulatto or all that stuff, yeah.
You were not designated by color. You were designated by blood quantum. By pedigree. Your color was irrelevant. Except that the preference was clearly to get a mulatto and a Creole. Get them together and see if you could get yourself something that came out looking like mocha. Okay. Dusky.
Yeah, right.
Right. That was the preference. Right. The continental women were so incredibly jealous of that skin. That perfect, creamy skin. And they pitched a fit and caused all kinds of political problems. It was partly due to their pressure that France said, yeah, we're definitely going to abolish slavery because we cannot settle these women down. They're outraged that the beautiful skins of the slave that the men couldn't quit talking about, it drove them crazy. He said, fine. Well, I mean, why don't we keep their beautiful skin and stop calling them slaves? And that'll do it, wouldn't it? That'll fix it. Can't be jealous of a free woman now, can you? Maybe y'all ladies should be getting a tan. Don't know what to tell you. But the preference for the darker skin was there. This is so ironic. And back to Shu and Shark. The preference by Europeans, evidently, the sexual preference for the dark skin, the value of the darker skin, all the way to deep, deep black. Meaning if he's deep, deep black, he's going to be a big, big, strong buck. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
If she's dusky skinned, how creamy and smooth her, voulez-vous coucher, right? How rich and lush she is. Right. And we don't want too dark, right? But we want her darker. Right? The English, no, they bred white. The French were so enamored with this new color of human being they kept producing that they literally, out of pure vanity and fashion, there wasn't anything else behind it. They just preferred their women kind of coffee colored, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of wild.
But they wanted the men raven black. The women, when they bought their slaves, invariably bought Negro slaves from Africa.
Right.
Well, that's strange. right? Because these were house servants. But they were running around purchasing what you would call a traditional field laborer. Extremely hardy, very, very dark, kind of almost Congolese looking.
Yeah.
It was strange, isn't it? So they're evidently sexually attracted. It's clear by all these Creole mulatto babies. Yeah. Okay, the Creole didn't come out of nowhere.
Right.
So they were being bred up, as they say, high yellow. Okay. And the same thing that made you a quarter this, a half that, an eighth. They understood husbandry. They said, oh, it's easy. In 4 generations, they'll all be white. Perfect. We have made more white people. We have enslaved black people, and they live only 7 years, so perfect. Right? We've got it all figured out. We've figured out the pedigree of a human being. We've created it out of thin air, but it took until 1820, almost 1821, because they kept breeding light. All right, that in around 1820 and 21, the people that constructed the form sent down a little addendum that said, from now on, don't refer to them by their here are the words you can use for color. Okay. All right. So Sambo disappears almost entirely because there's so few instances of that, but it disappears. All right. Toward the end of this, on some forms, essentially no other color needed to be listed at that point except this new one, black. By that time, there was a stark difference in skin color among black populations. By that time, you had white-looking black people.
Yeah.
The black-skinned people stood out everywhere. Suddenly, they were black. That color was defined by white, literally defined by white, because until then, that was not how they were distinguishing people at all.
Right.
Color meant temperament and tone, not skin color. Temperament and tone. How much purity there was. All right. And so they did a blood quantum, not color, skin color. They didn't say tawny, beige, blue point, smoky, raven, albino. No, they said we stopped caring. You're off the hook. Quadroon, right? Mulatto, right? And Maroon, right?
Right.
Sambo, and then Negro. That's how they did it. Boom, boom, blood quantum. And from what lineage? Pedigree words. No, all of a sudden, 1820, 1821, black. Not copper, not red, not tawny, not mocha, not white, black. From that moment on, the word black, designator black, meant slave.
Yeah.
From that very day on, because the colonial powers decided that was the case. From that day on. The dynamics of single mother, dependence on the system, the way the women had to make sure they were attractive because for the sake of the future of their children, because they wanted last names for their sons.
The carceral system.
Carnal system.
Yeah.
Just consume their flesh.
Yeah.
They're pretty mocha flesh. They're nice raven rainbow ass flesh. You know, carnal. And so building Blackness, we don't have Blackness until the day they wrote in, oh, I've got 3 black Africans. By that point, the way Africa was being colonized, it was required that you designate a black African from a white African.
Yeah.
Because the South Africans insisted. Now, to a South African or an Australian, anything that wasn't white was called a black fella.
What was it?
Black fella.
Black fella.
Black fella, they'd say. Black fella.
Hmm.
Uh, Black skin. Anything that wasn't white was black.
In South Africa?
And Australia.
Oh.
Oh, that was being, you know, the penal colonies were already over there
Yeah,
setting
right,
up. And...
yeah. Par for the course.
So black was created, its birthday, evidently, was about 1820, and it was born, evidently, in Westmoreland, Jamaica. And it was born to a woman named Sarah Spence and whoever her husband was. We could put it that way. So these white folks made a little black symbol of their own, all right? And from that day on, every slave they had, the only information in the blank at one point was black or nothing at all.
Wow.
And you can see it replacing things. You can see it clearly says Creole, but yet quadroon falls off. Mulatto falls off. You hardly ever see it. Sambo
Just
disappears.
to squeeze everyone into the blanket category of black.
He was saying, look, we don't have enough time for all that. It's only record their color if they're black. And then they started putting in something called DO. And it was just strings and strings and strings of DO, DO, DO. And I looked and looked and looked. I was like, what do you mean DO? And I was seeing them on inventory losses. And I think apparently that means they didn't make it off the boat.
Oh. Overboard, I guess. I don't know.
Some was dove overboard, something. Or drowned, whatever.
Yeah.
Something.
That's really heinous.
Yeah, but there were a slew of those. So we get the word and concept, the idea of black as enslaved and male, specifically male. You don't see the invention black woman. It takes a minute. Because they didn't want women to be black. They didn't want their women to be black, did they?
No.
No, just the men. And as black is invented, very shortly thereafter, on the next manifest, you see a bunch of dove overboard. Lost due to dove overboard. Didn't make it. DOA, basically.
Damn.
And so they couldn't say exactly death, even if you did dive overboard. How do we know that you died? You didn't know you died, but anyway, you went overboard. While my lord was serving tea in the parlor, he had no idea that in a few months, what it meant to my lord to be a man, was about to be what it means to you to be a black man. Or whatever that is.
Right.
So, black is built in 1820 in Jamaica. That then reaches the States. Okay. The States is about to fight its own. In 1820, abolition was raging. Okay, it's about to fight the fight of its life. In what 45 years, the Civil War will be over and the slaves will be freed. Right.
On paper, anyway.
Because they're black.
Right.
Now, in America, when they were freed, they weren't given sovereignty. They weren't given status. They weren't given emancipation. They weren't given citizens' rights. They weren't recognized. They weren't acknowledged because they were black. Because Americans had been taught by this color coding of black men slave. Okay. That's not what it meant. You didn't even hear it before. Second, the slaves in the French colonies especially could marry, had entitlement, had inheritance, had status, could own and operate their own businesses, were quite legendary figures. They were well educated. They spoke 7 fucking languages. They knew how to play 12 instruments. They were all motherfucking Prince and Mozart and Queen, and it's true. And they were groomed for that,
Right.
right? Find me that in America. Not talking about New Orleans. Find me that in America. When did that happen in America?
Couldn't tell you.
Probably never.
Yeah.
Well, you can't hardly hear me. What would cause that? Why can't she hear me? She can hear you, but not me.
Hear you, but not me.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody know what that is? Is that on Streamlabs that does that?
That might be it.
Probably.
You could probably turn, yeah, if you turn your volume up and then turn like your desktop volume down.
Turn my desktop volume down. Okay, I got
That's what
desktop
usually.
audio.
That's what usually does it for me. It's the people that are talking in the background. They're super loud. I have to turn them a little bit lower than me.
If I turn my desktop audio down. But I'm that much. I'm not quiet. You're not louder than me. She can barely hear me. So I don't know what's causing that. Okay.
Huh.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. Anyway, I hope it comes out okay on the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, because sometimes it does that. It just gets really quiet. I don't know why. But anyway, all right. Here is just for my lord Creole 39. Looking at his forms. Let's look at where the situation is. Negro, Creole, Negro, Creole, Negro, Creole Quadroon, Thomas Ferguson. Females, Creole Negro, Creole Sambo,
Damn.
Creole Negro. Her name was Sarah Jones.
What up, Ruhan?
She was born. And her mother was Ancilla. She was born to Ancilla. Ancilla was Creole nation. This child was Sambo, which meant that Ancilla was probably considered black. Her father was Native American.
Okay.
Okay. So just to show you, I wanted you to see these entries that they do exist. Okay. So they have more contempt for BIPOC people than they did for black people. The way they named them, the way they disregarded them, and the way they can. Right.
Maybe they saw them as the greatest threat.
There's too much contempt in that for threat. It's a complete
It's like
even more
dehumanization.
animalistic.
Yeah.
Even more animalistic than to call somebody by the color of their skin. Just to call them a Sambo.
Yeah.
Like maybe some novelty in a zoo or something like this.
Right.
Anyway, I wanted you to see in the record, in its actual handwriting, that these words, they do exist. Here they are. And I'm trying to find. Anyway, I'll continue to look for the actual entry, black, but we see it for the first time as separate from other things. Okay, we're beginning to Freeman, Morgan Freeman. His family line's mentioned in this.
Yeah, lots of black people just went by Freeman just because they didn't have last names. Yeah.
Exactly. They weren't since the last name came from the owner, and you had to Freeman, right?
Yep.
There we go. Okay. So we see it being constructed. It was actually invented. It's an arbitrary shift in language from Negro, which after all is a Portuguese word for black anyway. But
Yeah.
Negro doesn't seem to mean, Negro and mulatto actually have anything at all to do with your color. Well, a Negro in South Africa could be blue-eyed, gold-skinned, red-haired. You know, a
Yeah.
quadroon could look like freaking pick an actress, Charlize Theron, whatever. Okay,
Right.
a mulatto, who would know? Who is of the black? We call them now. Now here's another thing that's changed. We do the same thing that they did back then. If you took Jada Pinkett Smith, Halle Berry, right? They're very fair, aren't they?
Yeah. Both pretty fair skin.
Very fair. Green, smoky, beautiful, blue. One of them got blue eyes. Okay, we still just look at them and go black.
Right.
We're not allowed to say quadroon queen. God damn, we can't say that. We just gotta say black.
Yeah.
How come we gotta do that?
I think that
What?
was brought about, like in terms of like for solidarity amongst the diaspora. I feel like that would be a reason, but also I feel like maybe that was forced upon us for like capitalist reasons. Like it's easier to, um, I guess, just like force all of those people, or it's less people to share power with, basically, that you
You
otherwise
know,
would.
you know. Just either way, somebody else is holding the paintbrush. I'm pretty sure neither of those women looked at all like the same woman they classified as an African black woman.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They would have definitively been quadroon. It wouldn't have made no damn difference. Say what you will, say what you want, but that's their pedigree. All right. In fact, I think it's Jada actually that is her pedigree. Um, I should say one of the two women who are nearly identical that Will Smith married, that was her actual pedigree. It's from New Orleans. um, anyway, but yeah, we have to look at her and just say black. Halle Berry, black. There was another one. What was another one? One Miss America or some shit. Anyway, blue eyes, kind of mocha tawny skin, maybe kind of
Yeah.
black. Okay, you know, um, they can't be anything else. It's ironically, it's like somehow if we don't call them black, somehow they're less pure. You know,
Yeah.
like somehow they're less they're less real as women. They're less valid somehow, unless we call them black. Now, that's where 200 years later, from 1822, the word black appears. This is 2022. 1822, you can't be anything else. You're black. 2022, you can't be anything else. You're black. Nothing has changed. Now, since the day that word was invented for a human being, it's not changed at all.
Yeah.
One of the biggest crises among black men is what? Their roles as fathers and husbands and
Right.
sons.
How that power was taken out of the community.
It was taken away from them as well.
Yep.
And they took the women out of the black communities, the African communities, which was their power, right?
Yep.
And they forced those women to give that glory, that crown, that power to some pompous French poodle ass, you know, fop, right? Well, so his babies could have skin that looked like what the hell, chocolate milk or something. So he could have candy colored babies. Or so his little daughter could have a little friend who looked just like her, all dressed up in a baby doll outfit and all that. What happened to those little when they hit the age when, one of you was going to have rights, learn to read and write, go to school, get married, have kids, and pass on her name, and the other one, what girls? Those bought companions, those pretty babies. Whatever happened to them? We have them recorded for every time that they were recorded, right? Um, unless one of them had a child, right? We hear the name once. And unless they die or had a baby, we never hear about them again. So we only are ever going to know about those who had children or who died. Other than that, they absolutely didn't fucking exist.
Yeah, I can imagine Satellite of Love. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the building of blackness in America. This was the building of blackness and it began in Jamaica. And it was brought here, black was brought here to the US because before that it was blood quantum, what they did to Indians.
Yeah.
So they did remember I said what they did to you, they practiced first. So they had y'all clocked by blood quantum and nationality. They considered Africa a nationality. That was kind of remarkable.
Yeah, an entire continent.
Yeah, one country, right? Africa. It's got one name, right?
Right.
So, holy shit. They didn't have the decency to find out what country they were. But you see, that was the building of blackness. That's how they built black. They built black where the men are disenfranchised, right? Where the women are commodified. And I heard somebody recently say, oh, but the men were commodified for their labor. And the scholars said, no, no, no. See, if they were commodified, they wouldn't be in prison.
Selassie, I also, just because I feel like it's also important to mention, I said, my understanding of black and blackness was that it was reclaimed by activists in the civil rights era to undo the white defined Negro labels. One of my favorite videos is of Malcolm X being challenged for calling black people black during an interview. Yeah, that's also, yeah, for sure. We're talking more so about the conception of like of it as a system of like racial hierarchy.
So we can talk about, that's exactly where it's going here, though. Was it reclaimed? When it doesn't appear that anything has changed. I
Yeah.
mean, the form of slavery that the U.S. enacts against black people today looks a whole lot more like Fran. Granted, it looks a whole lot more like Norland, like Creole, right? But it doesn't appear to have changed. All right, so did it change? Was it reclaimed? Is grabbing the N-word reclaiming a label? Was Malcolm X right? We can actually talk about that. I wanted you to see, yes, what I'm pointing to, this actually happened. Somebody handwrote this bullshit
Yeah.
and forever changed the character of black people in the Western Hemisphere forever. The day they did it, it might as well have been genocide.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you can talk to me about modern theory. What does it mean to be a black man today?
For sure.
And why? Finally, my chat, I hope you understand now. Now, do you know why dark-skinned babies matter? That I'm bringing it right back to that question that Zero couldn't get his head around. In the construction of even specifically male identity, black skin, dark skin matters, especially the construction of black female identity, because a black African woman was the lowest down on the totem pole. And then later, socioeconomic theory, it said that the black woman in modern America was a step above a black man. Black man was still treated like a slave. The black woman could curry favor, etc. Easier for her to get the job, etc. In other words, they were saying that it was clear that on plantations, the status of women was much higher than you might realize by virtue of their objectification. They were
Yeah.
the desirable commodity. You know, the men were just, well, they were just there to do the hard work and stand around on the porch and try to catch a glimpse of what used to be their wife, right? So, what is the black man now?
Yeah.
Why does the dark skin matter? Now that you've seen the evidence of what constructed black, you said to Zero repeatedly, this dark skin, I want it to be there in the future. But now
It,
you see the evidence.
there was actually also a video that I shared earlier today that was about it was Vice News talking about how people of like two different ethnic backgrounds living in China, how there's like a preferred mixed race, right? Where like if you're
Mm-hmm.
African and Chinese, that's not as desirable as being white and Chinese.
Same as Sambo versus Quadroon.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. True. All these mixes,
the black person
mixing and
is the
matching.
opposing force to white supremacy, correct?
And how would we know the black force is black? To be incredibly stupid and blunt. How would we know that?
Because it's the dark skinned people.
That's right. Because they fucking look black,
Right.
right? Somebody who looks like Halle Berry and Jada Pinkett Smith has to take a world of shit for them to be seen as legit. They have to fight for that.
Right.
Okay. Um, so literally, the black people want to reclaim what was taken from them and challenge, but how would you tell if they didn't look black? Would white people see them as a challenge if they didn't look black? If they looked light skinned, if they had green or blue eyes, would white people see them as a threat, an opponent? Would they take them seriously? Or would they just be Sambo?
Yeah.
You see?
I have cousins fluent in Mandarin Chinese, and it seems like learning Chinese, just knowing any, like more than one language in general, is a flex. But yeah, I've been kind of sus about China and how they move with Africa and African people for a minute, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I've had to sit on some of their negotiations, and they're really going hard for Ghana. Here we found another Jane Creole symbol. Um, yeah, so those are the questions when I saw this I wanted to ask. You know, could we imagine what it was like to be a black man back then? And what does it mean to be a black man today, given the fact that black was the option, the only option handed certain men, evidently based solely on the shade of their skin.
Yeah.
Okay. When they were the only clearly black people left, you know, you get one little Sambo, one little mulatto, and then it stops being that and it becomes black.
Yeah.
Um, somewhere in between. I'm gonna have to say 1820 definitively. Right? 200 years. What are the values there? You know, the repercussions. What happened to all the black-skinned men when they were freed? What happened to all the black-skinned women?
Yeah.
What happened to all the light-skinned people? So these are the questions.
Right.
And I still want people to squeeze their little eyes shut and tell me what it must have felt like to be the father of little Jimmy over there. Little
have
Jimmy,
have to
right?
watch your child be, and even in modern times, to have to be separated from your family because you got hit with a
Mm-hmm.
loitering charge or whatever bullshit the police want to boost their numbers for their constituency
Mm-hmm.
by making you suffer through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's her wife, but she's got to carry these kids from all these other men.
Right.
What did he think? Well, she's so pretty, I can't blame him. Or what the hell was going through what did he think of himself as a man? What did he think his purpose or function was as a man?
It's probably pretty dehumanizing, I would imagine.
Did he have one? I mean, he grew up like this, right? Did he have one? What was his function? Well, clearly, white men didn't want him to really have one, right? They kept calling him bucks and mares and, animal words.
Right.
So we can figure out he was a donor because he had a short ass life expectancy, right? But um he wasn't supposed to really be anything else. And if he dropped dead in the fields, well, that meant Lucy was available, right? Could Lucy say no to anybody? That was another question. Could she ever say no?
Yeah.
Did she have the ability to say no and survive it? Because in the United States, no, she didn't,
Right.
right? Yeah, it was a story of a white plantation owner went chasing all of his slaves, right? A young lady who actually from Africa, right? Of course, you know, smacks at him with his forward advances. So you don't understand what you're doing, right? And his wife came and slapped the woman in the face. How dare you reject my husband? Do you think you're better than him? So you can imagine what happened to her.
Yeah. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, yeah. The man's wife was outraged. I don't understand why you don't allow him to sexually assault you. I mean, after all, what a privilege that. How dare
Right.
you?
Yeah.
What kind of thinking, you know? So in France, they were acting too much like royals, and France said, "That's it. I'm taking away your chew toys. I'm gonna make these people free, and then I'm gonna give them guns, and then I'm gonna give them torches, and then I'm gonna give them freedom." Hmm. Right. Britain just sort of went, uh, let's just wash our hands of it, right? Let's just go blow up slave castles. Screw it. We'll look like the good guys, right? They'll be making a movie about us in 150 years, and they'll be calling it Amistad, right? Um, right. And Americans went, but my rights, and they literally doubled down and reinforced and sort of codified all this that they had been taught was the way to do slavery. You know,
Yeah.
Black, African, you know, 7-year life expectancy, the whole thing, right? So they made that the reality, right? I mean, to this day, if you ask most people about slavery in the US, the only concept they have is what they saw on the TV, that it was boats of a slave and that was it. They came over, dumped them off, and put them in prison, chain gangs on cotton plantations, and that was it. You know, there's nothing else to the story. You know, like America likes to think it invented slavery. You know,
Right.
it's totally narcissistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to admit that other countries had anything to do with it because that would steal our power. You know, like Ted Bundy talks like that. Okay, we just analyzed him, and that's exactly him and the other 5 serial killers I looked at. They wouldn't admit they were suicidal. They couldn't admit they were afraid. They couldn't admit they were weak. Bundy tried to say that essentially he had a perfect family. There was never any, his sister. It was a perfect family. You know what I mean? Oh no, it's nobody's fault but my own. I mean, he was so narcissistic. He wanted to take all the credit. Like
Yeah.
ISIS. I like ISIS. Right? That's a hell of an ego. Right? Anyway, true. No, America was like that. It wanted to take, it wanted to be legendary, exceptional. So it took racism and made it exceptional, you know? And we get the sort of almost like Holocaust level type narratives
Yeah.
from that, because that's what it sounds like. And the rest of it just doesn't exist. But that doesn't make any sense because when Queen and Bessie ran, they ran somewhere. They ran to somebody, right? They ran to somebody. And we know they made it because if they'd been caught, it would have recorded the loss due to death.
Right.
So that was not a large area. And no. Matter of fact, in the whole 30 years, they don't have a single instance of a slave who ran away who was captured and killed.
Running away to
Yeah.
like maroon camps.
Something. They had someplace to go. They wouldn't have run away if they didn't. If this woman was from Africa, did she think she would run to the ocean and her village would still be there?
Yeah.
I'm already wanting to see this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
I'm already wanting to see this. Yeah. But the questions remain. This is the methods that they use to build blackness. The conditions of it, the disenfranchisement of it, the dysphoria of it,
Right.
the dichotomization of gender. All right. All of it was not an outcome of, right? It was a deliberate move. They were treated like animals, so they were treated exactly like animals. I don't care how they dressed them up. French kids dress their poodles up in foo-foo clothes too. Put them in a carriage, feed them out of a little baby bottle, it's all cute and shit. Right? So they were treated exactly like animals, even like pets. And then all of a sudden, that condition changed names. It was rebranded, and it was called black.
Yeah.
So that's the semiotic and psycholinguistic analysis of the building of blackness. It's in the books, literally. You don't have
Yeah.
to look any further at all.
And then from that point on, it's just kind of you have the black codes and segregation and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you have divisive points of view, like between yourself and Zero.
Right.
And Zero said, I could care less.
Which is bizarre to me, but you know.
He doesn't want to be blacked. He doesn't want to be blacked. Black.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, didn't want to be racialized. Yeah. Which I was
Mm-hmm.
saying, I was just having a conversation with someone else. Like, that's an understandable sentiment. It's just what
Mm-hmm.
you, the direction that you point the energy matters, I feel like.
I heard you saying that. So we can see that Blackness was built. When was built, and then somebody says, well, I'm not built that way. I'll tell you what, you can keep your little label. I want nothing to do with any of this.
Hmm.
All right. What happens? How is that perceived by many black communities?
I perceived it as like super misguided and just kind of the most important bit. I feel like, at least with how I've spoken to a lot of conversation, like the conversations I've had with a lot of other black people in the aftermath of that, is that this just is not a safe person anymore. You know what I mean? They just like not,
Hmm.
you know, not as in like they're a danger explicitly, but like you can't trust them as much as you could trust. As you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes
Right.
sense.
Well, they're not with you on that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, they're not down. They're not on
And they're
code.
not down with it. Yeah, they got a different sickness, right? They're not down with this. Okay, so where does that leave the visibly black person? The one who can't pass, the one who can't shrug it off, and the one who can't um uh get away with critiquing and commenting on uh poverty in the hood, right?
I feel like that's you know, because the question of intersectionality came up a lot in those conversations that I was having
Mm-hmm.
as a direct result of that, and I feel like a lot of people were misappropriating that word, and like what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about now speaks directly to what the I guess the author of that term, Kim Crenshaw, was talking about with how you have to move through the world, especially as a racialized like black woman. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As a person who's gonna get
Exactly.
the is gonna take it from all directions because black men are not always uh, on code when it comes to protecting and uplifting black women at all times as well. So
No, but then for 200 years, come on. I mean, it's counterintuitive, isn't it?
yeah.
You know, so you have to talk about ugly things. And Kimberly Crenshaw was sitting in there doodling, worrying about a case, doing a geometry problem, and realized that she was working on what's known as intersection, solving an intersectional problem, intersectional geometry. Doodling. When she looked at what she'd drawn and said, "Well, that's it.
Hmm.
It's the system is it's got an infrastructure with geometric measurable dimensions." She said, "If it's got an infrastructure, we can measure its limits." But people forget that's what she meant by her theory. They were too busy trying to figure out how to do the math.
Yeah.
Okay. So intersectionality is the way the system sets itself up to include and privilege and then exclude and marginalize. So she was looking for the limits of the system. You can see why that might be important,
Yeah.
right? So that's intersectionality theory. And yeah, that's exactly. And she was working almost exclusively with black women in the court system, in the legal system.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, how come black men come out with different outcomes?
Right.
It's just common sense. She just asks a simple question, right? And that's what intersectionality theory is, right? You
Mm-hmm.
want to complain about critical race theory, and I'm like, if you can't even understand intersectionality when it happens in your, how are you going to understand critical race theory?
Right.
Okay, we got a problem, right? um, do black people, you think, intuitively grasp those concepts, or is it true that being marginalized, you have perspective, that
Excuse me.
POV of the other,
I
you know?
think black women do, but I think black men
Mm.
specifically because of I don't know. I feel like black men specifically, it's really easy for us to go into pick me mode. You know what I mean? It's really easy for us to get
Pygmy, you mean
to
pygmy
activate.
little man hiding in the forest?
No, like pick me, like
Pick me.
yeah.
Me. I got you. Okay. So maybe you can describe that because that's the hopefully we'll have at least from one man what it feels like to be a black man in this country
I've heard it.
after 200 years of being shaped. Okay, go ahead.
So I was gonna say I've heard it described very poorly, mind you, as like black men are we kind of occupy the same social space as white women, which like
Wow.
you understand why it's silly, like putting it that way,
Well,
but
it's not silly, it's intriguing.
right, yeah, but the underlying sentiment is essentially that the same way that white feminists are not really interested in challenging the structure of power and destroying the structure of power itself. They just want to share power over others with white men.
At least they're white, right?
Right. Yeah. Black men, we are like, at least we're men, right? Like we, it's really
Yes.
easy for us to get into that. And we see a lot of that with the manosphere shit, right? Where we perpetuate, we as in black men, I don't believe a lot of this shit. And a lot of people who are watching this probably don't either. But I'm just speaking in generalities here for the sake of argument. But like, black men, I feel like it's our black men specifically who grow up in like the fly in the milk experience as well are particularly
Yes.
susceptible to because they already exist kind of in a social hierarchy above other black people, right? They distinguish themselves from hood, or these are the bougie black people we talk about that want to distinguish themselves from hood or ghetto black people or whatever. And so
Mm-hmm.
they, instead of recognizing the power structure itself as problematic, they just want to share power with white people or just white men and keep white women also subservient, like underneath them in the hierarchy.
So there's two things. I grew up in communities that were all people of color. I noticed there was a massive difference between black men and indigenous men. All right. So one of them in particular, and it was blatant, point blank, an indigenous man was most likely to say, "A woman defines me. I'm not a man until or unless I'm defined by a woman." I had never heard a black man say that. I grew up with black men that would say, "Nobody defines me. No woman defines me. Nobody owns me. I'm a man, damn it, and I'm a black man, damn it. It's the same. It is conflated." Just
Right.
as the black feminists tried to explain, nothing defines a black man. He can't allow that to happen. He has
Right.
to be his own creation, and at the same time, what you made of him. And his anger and outrage sees out of that. He is still in shackles, separated from his wife, disenfranchised from his holdings, his aspirations, his children, and his influence. And if such a man were to make a bid for power, right, and he cannot compete with his white counterpart, what is his option?
There really isn't any option except to inflict uh, that same oppression upon perhaps other people who
Hmm.
might not have the same perceived social status as you, or
Hmm.
the same voice as you. So like other black people,
Hmm.
black women.
Inflict,
Yeah.
inflict, right? He can't let his woman walk all over him. Right?
Right. Right. Right.
Um, Now what then becomes? We have these two. It's a chess table because America's decided they don't put two pieces on this table, black and white. So he can't compete with his white counterpart. Well, he can, but it's a great risk, and his chances are pretty slim because where's his path to power? Okay, okay, he's got to go somewhere for it, right? Now, the disenfranchising of black people in the country is nearly to. I mean, yeah, it's yeah. Come on, give me a break.
Right.
Yeah, I know there are actors, Denzel Washington, right? What's the other guy? Uh, Wesley Snipes. Well,
It
not
was,
Wesley
yeah.
Snipes. He don't fucked up.
He
Denzel
fucked up a little
Washington,
bit.
right?
I fuck with
Only
Wesley
a
Snipes though.
little.
I fuck with Wesley
Love
Snipes is
both
one
of
of my
them.
favorite.
Wade,
Wesley
come on,
Snipes is
come
my,
on.
yeah. He's one of my problematic favorites for sure.
Okay. Denzel Washington. Bougie and proud of it. He's a Uji bougie. He loves it. Right.
FD Signifier. Shout out to FD Signifier. He just put out a video about like black capitalists, like people like Jay Z, Beyonce, Rihanna, all these people.
Black capitalists, doing it for themselves, doing it well, outperforming. Kim Kardashian is black, technically, isn't she?
No,
Or
absolutely
is she
not.
Italian? She Italian? Who knows?
She is Armenian, I believe, is her like ethnic, like if we're racializing her. But she is for all intents and purposes a white person.
Yeah, she looked like I don't know. I just look at her and go, but oh yeah, the Chud's here and he's listening to everyone saying, and he's
Yeah.
calling you a name. And so in the middle of our discussion, we're gonna
Yeah, it's going
probably
on
call that
here,
for
but
what it is.
I was
Hmm.
ignoring it. I'm just gonna set
No,
my
just
chat
ignore
to
it. I'm
yes.
just gonna point it out because, reasons.
It's pertinent
That
to the discussion, but yeah, I
Yeah,
just ignore it, and I just set my chat to follower only again. So it's
I
funny
have my
that
own
it
follower.
happens when we try to have these types of discussions. People want to be disruptive, and yeah,
They're watching and waiting. I have mine on followers only too, so this one actually couldn't stand it and waited the whole verified an email, verified a fucking phone, waited a week, waited the 10 minutes, hit the follow button, and then dropped this in chat.
sheesh, thirsty,
Uh-huh.
thirsty. It's that clout chasing disease.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we know where that's all coming from now. Um, okay, there we go. Um, anyway. So yeah, I mean, when we get down into the thick of it, that leaves one relationship on the table, right? The relationship between black men and white women.
It's always been precarious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you were in Jamaica in 1820, you'd have it all figured out, wouldn't you?
Yeah, or
Your
it
name
would be
would
figured out
be
for you.
your name would be Prince or Monkey or My Lord,
Right.
and somebody's wife would have bought you and dressed you up
For shits and
to,
giggles.
for shits and giggles to make fun of the crown, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic, right? So the relationship there when you said the grab for power has something to do with the relationship. If if such a man, as I described, still in these shackles, right, couldn't get to the power, right? His option would be he could give up, walk away, lose the war, walk away. He'd be okay. Or what? What's his option? He's got what path? Any path? Has he got a path? Hey, that's assuming he's not Denzel Washington, okay? Or or he can't portray Ray Charles, right? Because he's brilliant. right?
Right.
You know,
For a lot of people, the only option is to play the game as best you can.
you're still stepping and fetching,
Yep.
trying to get out of the field and into the house, and hopefully maybe they'll leave you the house or something.
Yeah.
But
Kind of
in
just
terms of
succumbing to
duration and
power.
gender, duration and gender, um, what is closest to a white man?
A white woman.
How come a black man isn't closest to a white man? Aren't they both men?
Yeah, but a black man's black.
That means he's been feminized.
FD kind of refers to it as degendering.
Uh huh.
Because it's not so much that we've been feminized, because with what you're referencing earlier, because dark skinned men were fetishized for our
Mm
what's perceived as hyper masculinity and so on and so forth.
hmm. Mm
It's
hmm.
that it's how you reduce a man to just male, right?
Mm hmm. You've disempowered him.
Yeah, you've dehumanized him. You've degendered
You
him.
and you've disenfranchised him.
Yep.
It's just a male of the species
Yep.
of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, a lot of feminists, the black feminists, would talk about the. Sometimes they would use queer studies terminology. They would say the queering of the black man. Sometimes they would say the feminizing of him, the gendering of him, the emasculation of him. Right.
Mm.
Whereas a white man could say, I may be poor, I may be, I'm over here, I'm a carpetbagger, I got no teeth in my head. Well, my daughter is my sister, but I'm still white.
Right.
Right? They were way more disenfranchised than most of the black freed people, okay, after the Civil War. And they were, in their minds, oh, but they were still entitled and they were still better because they were white. They didn't say, I'm still a man. No, they said, oh, but at least I'm white. And a black man, what's he gonna say? At least I'm still a man.
Yeah.
To who?
Right.
Right? So he's gonna have to run around proving that a whole lot. So if he had a path to power and he wanted to get closer to the white center of power, um, as you said, in a way, wouldn't he have to sort of go through white women to do that?
Yep.
How does that happen in today's world? Because I can give you an example of that where I live, which is flatly mind blowing. But tell me how that happens in the real world. How does a black man into this country wanting to get through into that power, which happens to be white? How does he go through a white woman, for instance, in order to pursue that, to claim the prize, if you will?
I would say professionally, probably just in a professional setting, fucking the hustle mind grind set, the hustle culture shit that a lot of black men are fucking
Hmm.
infected with.
Oh, everybody's a coach. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've all got their eyes on the prize, right? Hustle. It looks a lot like I watched a video of in South Africa where the Boers, right? You know those guys.
Yeah.
And they had these cameras, and they were so excited that they had these film cameras where there's no sound, so they're sped up quite quickly. And they put on parade for the camera their um their uh their best workers, right? Now they like the little, Osak people, the little Bushmen. They liked them a lot. They had the filed their teeth down like in Amistad. And they're little people and they're considered the elders. And that's why they grieved. If you remember the movie, when he died, it was such a bad omen, and they grieved because he was like an elder. Um, anyway, um, and they really liked them, and they really hated the Zulus, so they didn't put the Zulu on camera. They put the Bushmen,
Hmm.
right? That they often preferred. They were smaller, compact, much lighter skinned, much lighter eyes, very loving, gentle. These were the people in the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy. They, in their own societies, they did not know violence. There was no punishment. They shared everything. Hmm. Wow. Anyway, so they showed them busy at work trying to ram these timber through these mills, you know. And, on cue, the big fat-bellied boar is standing at the camera with his big twiddly mustache going, look over here, look over here, say, look how fast you can do that. Oh, Sambo, do that faster. No, do it with one hand. Do two pieces with one hand. And the man complied, grinning from ear to ear with this grimace on his face that was just almost grotesque, trying to hustle, trying to show, you know what I mean, his hustle. Right?
Yeah,
Jamming these
right.
logs in one hand, took both hands off, uh, did tricks pushing it through. You could tell he was straining every muscle in his body, every tendon. And the big fat guy just clapping his hands and going, isn't it all so marvelous? Isn't it all wonderful?
Makes me think
I've
of
never heard of Mandela. It's not going to ever happen. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
it
Right?
makes me think of the job situation I just left, and the person on the dock who should be the one that's most willing to organize the rest of us to negotiate about our pay and stuff, but is doing that instead.
That is exactly why I walked off of mine. Same thing. And just that the guy's attitude is, he want to clap his hands and chop 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 chop, come on come on come on come on come on, create havoc and drama. And I was like, dude, it's a slave wage job. I actually told him to his face.
Yeah.
I said, look, I know all y'all in the back of black, all right? You trying to run out everybody that figured that much out. Let me tell you something. It is a slave wage job. He stopped. I said, that means you too, boss. Slavery, right? It's
Yeah.
not worth all the drama. It's not worth all the drama.
Right.
Calm down.
You're
Or
not getting out
or
as much as you're putting in.
or put my ass in charge. Those are your options.
Right.
And he just looked at me and he was like, God damn. I said, I'm not kidding. I'm not the one who's faking it till I make it.
That's real shit.
And I said I walked off. And I went, love you. Figure it out. Bye bye. I'm still on the schedule. I figured out too. I looked at the schedule. Everybody walked. And I went, oh well. Anyway, point being, I didn't want to see him behaving that way. He's a black man, black father of four. I didn't want to see him behaving that way. He just doesn't understand what I'm trying to tell him. That he looks like that bushman shoving those timbers with one hand like a trained monkey for his white master. That's what he looks like to me. Now I see it that way, and I'm not black, but he black. How come he don't see it that way? Ain't he a black man? Shouldn't he be the one to see it that way?
I mean, it's there's also a certain degree of like with the epigenetic trauma and stuff of like conformity being safety. You know what I mean? So there's a bit of that
Well, yeah.
that needs to be unlearned as well, I guess.
Yeah, but then isn't he also afraid of stepping out of line because, somebody else has the power of life and death and over him and his feeding his kids? I mean, isn't that
Yeah,
slavery?
yeah,
Isn't that slavery?
absolutely. Yeah, it's weird that like, yeah, it didn't. So like, white supremacy and slavery and stuff never really left the fabric of American culture. It just changed its form and
Hmm.
like what it looks like and how it actually affects people. Um,
Well, it looks like it was built to last, doesn't it? Based on these registries.
Oh
It
yeah.
was deliberate
Um,
design and built to last. It was not meant to. It was not meant to. Why do
one
you
of
think the South fought so hard?
so one of the things that and when people try to just to put in perspective how old and how not old it is at the same time, and like how the permanence of these institutions can really just be made manifest to people. One of the things I talk about a lot is the Thomas Viaduct in Relay.
Oh wow! God, you're so well read. Yeah.
David Hayter in chat, thank you. Young Don, I gotta look into Young Don. But the Thomas Viaduct is you know about the Thomas Viaduct, right? I'm gonna explain it for the
Yeah.
viewers, but basically it's I think it's the second oldest, if not the oldest, stone bridge in the world for
The
trains.
world.
Yeah, it's actually
Oh.
still in use. CSX runs trains on that thing every day. It was built in 1835. It was built 5 years after Nat Turner's rebellion in 1830. It was used in the relay house was used in the United States Civil War by the Union troops. They had Fort Dix and two other forts. I think one was named Fort John, and I forget what the third one was named. That they had there to make sure that the Confederate soldiers weren't sabotaging their supply lines, their supply routes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a really old fucking structure, but it works just as good as the day they put it up, and they put it up in 5 years after Nat Turner's rebellion. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
if you can imagine something like that having the permanence that it does, imagine something that requires no maintenance other than its self perpetuation through money, I guess, because money is power.
Of course it is. Money is power. It was built to last, and it was built. Let's see, 1830. Um, 10 years after the word black permanently codified a, a slave in this country.
So
Um,
15 years after was the Thomas Viaduct built, and it's still in use for the same purpose and just as efficient, serves the same purpose it did all those years ago.
yeah, it was built to last. Um, it was like everything was fortified. Over the top, excessive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything, because the threat was imminent. You know, but money is power, which brings it back to, and I hope somebody can talk a little bit from Malcolm X. Money is power. If you are as the breadwinner, as the head of household, traditionally, you're supposed to be the one making the money to get to the power. Um, right? It's supposed to be you make the money, you got the power, right?
Yeah.
Right. That might be true if you're white. But if you're black, what happens is it's flipped on you. You see, you have to have the power before you can make the money. Best way to do that is to terrorize somebody.
True.
You know,
Yeah.
and if you ain't gonna go through no white woman to the power, right? You gonna make that money, right? Because this is America.
Yeah.
Black men make that money. And that's what he was saying the whole time, right? Dollar bills, dollar bills. Smoke a blunt, dollar bills. Right. Um, so paths to power, the building of blackness, right? In Jamaica, right? And paths to power, right? Intersection. Um, the hustle is circumventing those intersections while appearing to stay compliant. There's just enough to keep them off your track
Yep.
because you got your side gig, right? Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you is a black folk person. Um, we're talking like big things and Hollywood characters. What about you? What does all this have to do with you? You endless. You sitting here sharing all this stuff and talking to
Um,
chat and trying to educate. What about you
S-
personally? Like
Celeste,
no bullshit.
yeah, Celeste I actually just said what I was thinking is that community can be a path to power, and for me, doing this whole thing is like trying to get everyone on code and get everybody as excited and as invested in ideas about like come like I don't know, collective bargaining is not really the word, but like as invested in coming together in solidarity and being like we have power in our labor and all acting as one, and we all
Hmm.
have the same experience because we've all been forced into having the same collective experience, so we could ally ourselves based just on that and
Hmm.
put all of our effort into getting justice or seizing power for ourselves to have equal power, whatever that looks like, whatever that is. And like, because I retweeted it earlier that when I say anarchy or when I say revolution, people think of like insurrection and fucking like Molotovs in the streets and AR-15s and fighting the police and all that shit. But like,
Chaos. Yeah.
what I actually mean and what I feel like most people actually mean and what I think is the actual true way is just like you and your homies having a good time and making it so other people that you might not even know can also have a good time. But yeah, that's kind of what I want to establish my platform as
Hmm.
without all of the like pomp and circumstance and all that stuff. It's legit just like a chill spot for black people, I hope, is what my platform is. And beyond that, a place where we can openly discuss and organize revolutionary ideas like food not bombs, community fridges, fucking abortion funds, fucking self defense committees, fucking all these different things that are like revolutionary ideas that the effort just has to be put into actually organizing these things because like this is Twitch, and the one thing that we're all supposed to be good at is like entertaining people and like getting money sent to us, right? Like doing fundraisers,
Hmm.
doing mutual aid and stuff. So like it's really just a matter of properly organizing different people in different
Hmm.
areas till we finally
Hmm.
have like a giant uh
Guild.
citywide, nationwide, worldwide, whatever network of
Hmm.
just
Guild.
based yeah, guild, yeah, of just
Guild.
like
Okay. Yeah. Oh, what a good
based
word. Thank you.
activity.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah. Collective.
Yeah, 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 collective for
Okay.
sure.
Of autonomous units.
Hmm.
Okay. At that point, you have something like a confederacy. Hate that word, but that's kind of what it
Yeah, that
is.
word has weird connotation in America,
Don't
but
like it at
that's
all.
that is what it
Yeah.
is.
It is what it is. Also, the mutual aid that the way we work together with is called reciprocity.
Yep.
The kind of justice in a system like that is called restorative or rehabilitative or reconciliatory,
Yep.
not punishment.
Yep.
So
Yep.
abolish fucking prisons.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. I just spent, and you missed all of it. 2 whole days I went over what I actually thought about, how to abolish a prison and what would need to happen. And we have
You know
cooked
what's
up
funny
like
is
up
we
a strategy.
actually because I did a Kevin panel. It was just like the Council of Kevins. It was like me, Kevin F. Logan. Yeah,
I
yeah,
reviewed that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's well. So then, yeah. So yeah. But that's what we spent a lot of time talking about this past Saturday when we did that.
Uh-huh.
Punishment is counterproductive. Yes.
Yeah, I was asked, oh, so you don't. you don't believe in punishment. I said, no, I don't. They tried to do the, but what about?
They always do
I
that.
said, I just said, I don't believe in punishment. But being from my culture, um, we also have, we kill cannibals, okay? So
Yeah.
we'll eliminate a cannibal, okay? But only as a last resort, and only after everything else has been sought, and only if we have no other choice. We consider that self-defense.
Right.
But, but would I back capital punishment? No, because it's still punishment.
Yep.
How you gonna learn your lesson if you dead?
Yeah.
That's still
Facts.
punishment. Look, anybody who even has it in their mind, problem is they feel powerless, they feel afraid, and they want control.
Yep.
And the first word out of that person's mouth is, how do you control for it? And I said, you don't have to say anything else. I just told you. You don't have any power. The minute you use the word control, I know that what you meant was punish. And that I'm not backing down off that. Our
That's
people are
facts.
permissive. We don't punish. There are consequences. Half the time, they're built in. Try raising adults and not children or pets. And what makes you think you have the right to punish anyone?
Right.
Where do you get that idea from? So, yeah, prisons are for punishment. So, therefore, abolish prisons. Replace the method of restorative justice, rehabilitative justice. The institution is there. You got a venue. You just need to implement the method, and then you go ahead and dismantle the structures that support punishment instead of justice. In other words, that one woman in BLM said, "You're lucky. We want justice and not revenge."
Yep.
And it didn't dawn on anybody that the criminal justice system only wants revenge.
Right.
So abolish the fucking prisons.
Facts.
I don't care what you decriminalize. Don't decriminalize, but abolish the fucking prisons. Period. Punish somebody for what? Being a how many you? Never mind. Abolish the prisons. That's it. Anyway, um, um, yeah. Period. No, okay. You need to contain somebody, restrain somebody. You have their little timeout room. You have people that are so sketchy and untrustworthy and slobbering and foaming at the mouth like Ted Bundy and stuff. Well, clearly that guy can't be alone for 2 minutes. That's a case. We can talk about exceptions. Right? Those who are that psychopathic, those who are mentally ill, don't need to be in prison.
Yeah.
The real monstrous, grotesque, heinous people. Um, I say, I don't mean study them like some animal in a zoo. I mean, let them be in an institution, a space, a venue, a center, where the hope is that you can get them to participate in the research to find out how they ended up that way. Because you could take the most hard time, you know what I mean, thunder cloud full of tears dude in there. You know what I'm talking about? You can make the most Green Mile dude, okay, standing in there, and you stick him next to somebody like Richard Chase or Boston Strangler or Ted Bundy. You stick him next to one of those, and he pisses himself. He thinks he's such a badass,
Right. Or like a
but he's
Richard
never met
Kuklinski.
true inhumane behavior. Yeah. All right. So therefore, abolish fucking prisons. Okay. So, and I know, having worked with the criminal justice system, forensic psychology, yeah, but punishment doesn't work.
Yeah.
Extremism, war college, a general from Niger, a lawyer representing them, said, "So you really think that we shouldn't punish extremists when we find them in the ranks?" And I said, "Well, how many Timothy McVeighs do you want anyway?" And man, you would have thought, right? I mean, they squared up, right? And I went, I know, I don't like that name either, but I'm just asking you to your face, how many do you want? Because that's what you're going to get. And the general from Niger, this dude dealt with Boko fucking Haram. This
Yeah, that's
dude,
wild.
this dude knew fucking Idi Amin, okay? And all he would do was nod and put his hands on the table. And he said, I told you, I told you, I told you. And I went, me and the black man told you. Because he was the only black person at the table. I'm the Indian one. I'm the ex-domestic terrorist, right? And the black Nigerian general. And I told you. And here all the white men sitting in there with their brass, gling, gling, gling. And I almost quoted Charles Manson. I didn't go that far. I wanted to, because he said, the way he said it, these children that come at you with knives, they're not my children. I didn't teach them. They're your children. You taught them. I was so
Yeah.
close. So close. But all I could come out with was how many Timothy McVeigh's do you want? Or the Ted Kaczynski's. How many?
Ted Kaczynski's. Sheesh.
Yeah, the MF Ultra. Yeah, Unabomber. Yeah. That's what you're going to get. And they took my recommendation up to whoever was in charge of, they appointed this guy. And the whole War College made that bid, and they took that recommendation up there, right? They kicked out some sad-ass paper and, of course, gave all the money to somebody else.
Whack.
But it had a huge, big old paragraph about recent, research findings indicate that punishment is not the first, in other words, they took my advice, all right. Some other crew, as they talked, right, added that into their paper, published it, they got the funding. And nothing was done about it. Anyway, because me and the black man told him so. I mean, it was like having Chris Rock sitting there. Rufus and Dogma. Like, seriously. Seriously. And talk about intimidating. He was a 5-star general. And
yeah,
huge.
That's scary.
Yeah, he was just straight scary. But luckily, I work with Africans enough to know they do the same thing Arun would know people do. When they wag their head, they're actually kind of meaning yes, not no. And so the other men thought he was wagging his head, and they thought he was disagreeing. And I was nodding right at him. Right. He was like, I was like, right. So it was this whole colored dialogue happening at this table with the fucking War College, right? Crying to me about extremists have infiltrated the armed forces. I was like, well, G.I. Joe, man. I mean, gung ho. What? Wait, what? And yeah, and they had called me in specifically as a consultant, as the chief consultant, and I brought them world-class research. That's how they endorsed it, and they didn't even have the clout to stop the grift, and they was mortified. And I was like, "Damn, y'all are naive for all that brass. You're kind of fucking stupid." I mean, but you really, but but then also as a veteran, I had no idea. Blinded me. I was starting to have flashbacks. So I half can't see. So I turned to the side and put my head down. And I just told him, I'm sorry, I'm visually impaired. And then I had this shade of glasses I used to wear when CTV would come on. You know what I mean? My black glasses. So I stuck those on. It looked like, so they wouldn't, yeah. Because I just couldn't look at them. But that wasn't as bad as sitting in front of Quantico. Quantico, FBI, they are chomping at the bit to punish. Frankly, I was surprised. They were literally baring their teeth and clenching their hands, and they looked like they was jonesing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Tweak, tweak. and frothing and spitting and cackling and patting themselves on the back and one was in there bragging about, I can't even go into it, but punishment, man. And I
Yeah.
thought the military are not the punishers, man. The military were never they were the defenders, man. The FBI and the cops, those are the fucking punishers. Holy shit. I said, you guys are like, I'm qualified to assess you, and I'd have to say you're on the psychopathy scale. All of you, right? That was scary. Because these was the Quantico, the behavioral sciences unit at Quantico. Jesus Christ, you know. And holy shit. Anyway, punishment. Yeah, it comes from those people who are most keenly interested in preserving their own privilege.
Yeah.
They're gonna smack your hand before you get in their cookie jar. And then they're gonna set the cookie jar so far out of your reach that they know it's a setup because they're gonna wait. They're gonna wait. They know you're gonna try to pull some tricky little move. Gotcha. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you're black. Don't reach for the fucking cookie jar. You got gluten intolerance. Just think of it this way. Tell yourself you have celiacs. Don't reach for the cookie. Right. So since you can't reach for the cookie because it's a trap, it's a setup. How are you gonna get your? Huh? Wait a minute. Yeah, you have to rethink everything, right? You have to rethink everything because you may be wearing a baby doll dress and looking like, you know, Miss Precious Sarah, daughter of, right? That may
Right.
be true, but in the end, those cookies aren't for you, honey. No, you're going to put them on a plate and you're going to serve them to your friend, and she'll eat first. And if she deigns, you might have a crumb. You might get a crumb,
Yeah, that's the most fucked up part.
but don't you dare put yourself on equal footing with her. Yeah, exactly. So abolish the monarchy as well, because that's the behavior of a royal.
Yeah. That's kind of what I've been laughing at lately is just like videos of football games of British people freaking the fuck out because Irish people just start singing Lizzie's in a box.
Oh, that's uncalled for, though. Don't you
Yeah,
think?
it is, but it's that shit's funny to
No,
me.
I tell you, that's Irish.
As a
Warning England. Warning
yeah.
England. Remember the
Oh yeah.
troubles? They're in a box now with your queen. Yeah, they would say some shit like that. Um, well, I mean, I think that's kind of low vote. I mean, at that point, I'm like, see, I just asked your boy Nana, what impact this would have on Ireland, and he went, "Oh, it's going, it's gonna pop off," and I went, "Yeah, I'm kind of scared," and there it is.
Yeah, it's uncalled
Um,
for, but it's at the same time. I
but at the same
I
time,
can't
right?
say I wouldn't like I'm not gonna sit here and say I would be above it if I was in the same position. I would be just as immature, especially if I was still drinking. I would be just as edgy. Like, oh yeah, I would be going crazy.
At the same time, they do refer to them as the Black Irish, do they not?
Oh yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think we
I think
um
we've covered that. I think we covered that in the year 1813, if I'm not. No, I think it was 1820, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
and like the origins of the police and stuff. Frackle, shout out to Frackle. Everybody,
Yep.
I always recommend everyone to watch Frackle's video on police abolition.
I did. I reviewed it for a half hour. Um, um,
Oh
about
yeah,
half hour was all we could take of it or needed. And it was an incredibly productive conversation. So
oh
I
yeah,
want to actually thank Frackle for taking the care to produce it as well as he did. And you were doing the voiceover too.
yeah. I did the original voiceover. I think I did
I
two voiceovers. I'm not sure, but
I really liked it. I didn't even realize that was you. I was like, oh my God. When did you get so professional? No, it was truly, I was like, dude, yeah, you should go do the voiceovers. Um, But okay, we've seen the evolution of blackness in Jamaica. Um, we see it
It's-
become an apex predator in the United States, you know. And so the question now is, um, in 200 years, to be honest, doesn't appear that anything has changed because the same fundamental conditions of slavery are not only existing, they're entrenched and systemic, they're endemic, they're innate almost. They're
yeah,
almost intrinsic because every child growing up in the visibly black culture, there comes a moment when the parents have to sit down and explain this shit.
right.
I don't have any white kids.
It should, but it doesn't. That's what the whole. That's what CRT is about, right? It's I don't want
Hmm.
my kid. I don't want you talking to my kid about this because I don't want to have to talk to my kid about this.
Oh, okay. She's saying don't curse. Okay, I'll try. That's right. We don't want to talk about this because anyway, reasons, right? Indian kids, there's the moment where they give you the first two books of what your culture is, and then the whole family sits with you, and it takes weeks to process it,
Hmm.
you know, because it's genocide.
Yeah.
Black folks sit around and tell their children about slavery.
Right.
What did Jewish parents sit around and tell their kids? Both? That nobody asked them.
Right.
Do you know there was a large pop of Jewish people because they were kicked out of Europe. They came with Columbus on his second voyage. He hit Jamaica, 1494. They had 2,500 people or more population. They built, but to this day, it's always been a mystery as to how so many Black Jamaicans ended up with names like Levi. And so when this reporter wanted to ask about it, one person said, "Oh, that's simple. My grandmother married a white Jewish man." And in other words, they intermarried easily
Yeah.
and easily, freely. And say, "You sure he was white? Because a white man wouldn't have been able to do that." um,
Right. I
but
feel like
yeah.
it would have been more of a to do.
Oh, it would have been a to-do. It would have been a fa. So, um, so I'm gonna continue. I'm always asking about identity, selfhood, culture, right? I know what things are constructed, but I'm gonna keep asking these questions. What did it mean to a black man in Jamaica in say 1813 to be a man? And I'm gonna continue to ask people today, what does it mean in 2022 to be an X? Because nothing happens in a vacuum.
Right.
And that's why I thought you would be really good to talk to right here because of your conversation. I hope this, even in your own mind, shed light on that conversation.
For sure. Yeah. I was kind of passing out because I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. But
That's all good.
um, I was coming in and out. But yeah, towards the end, for sure, it's been a real, like, just getting to, because I'd never actually seen, like I said, a lot of the, like the slave rule stuff before. And trying to hunt
Hmm.
that stuff down using ancestry is, it's tough because you have to talk to your specific family members to find a lot of that shit, and then you can only do so much with like just the free account or whatever. It's pretty fucking silly.
Well, I've got that and a bunch of archives, because our own family history. Um, so I have a whole bunch of other, in other words, I've got manifests, the actual manifests. I've got a whole bunch of documents like this. For me, a lot of them are in French, and I keep forgetting. My dumb ass will be like, "Oh yes, I know there was that thing was written in blah blah blah. Let me just go. Oh, They don't put anything online in French. Oh, those archives aren't accessible online because they're in French.
I think Peter Rucker spoke French, but he was from Germany. He came here with the French
Hmm.
Huguenots.
That's the guy, exactly.
Yeah.
Ruka. Hmm. He was a Huguenot. Yeah, exactly. Um, okay. So this is gonna be one of many continuing conversations. I
For
am
sure.
happy that you got to see these chilling documents. What just like without the without how would you call that? Your reaction to seeing those documents, unguarded reaction. I know we have a Twitch word for that, but
Yeah. It was like I know that stuff exists, so it wasn't as crazy to me as like the first time I first started reading about that kind of stuff. Like after I read Medical Apartheid and talked to my grandmother and so on and so
ew.
forth. But it was really, it was. I don't know how to describe the emotion of just seeing it, because you made light of it, the fact that there was so much effort put into like tidying the appearance of it. I mean, there's so much effort put into the aesthetics of it with how neat the
Mm-hmm.
manifests were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mocking it. Yeah, it's pretty cold-blooded.
Yeah,
That chattel slavery should be so regulated and orderly. It's as cold-blooded as it gets.
yeah, and I mean, the modern prison industrial complex, the prison system, it's it's brutal. It's a
Yeah,
fucking meat grinder. People at all
it's
levels of it suffer from it for any number of reasons.
it's the only time a person can be enslaved is when they've committed a crime.
Yep.
Don't tell me that shit's not slavery. It's exactly what it is,
Right.
right? We throw in a few extra colors every now and then just for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but yeah,
And people think
you
that they
know,
deserve it just because they committed a crime, but it begs the question as to what do we consider crimes, and then there's the fact
right.
that so many people spend decades in prison for crimes they didn't even commit anyway.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then it's arbitrary, you
Right.
know. I'm like talking, you talk about real harm done, and you got social media where people can hide like cowards to do maximum damage. Then you've got that too.
Right.
Got that too, you know. Um, and but in terms of, identities, intersected identities, um, the questions that are always left over is there's two directions, right? Well, whenever they built it, tear it down. And I'm like, and replace it with what? Shouldn't you have your own identity? Then maybe you won't need to tear anything down. Have it's an ethno state. I'm like, oh my God. So, but it
Silly.
always seems to be, yeah, it's always those two directions. Um, and I think people they're stuck in between those two,
Yeah.
right? But if you can see how it was constructed, you know your enemy then, because you know his weapons and his tools.
Yep.
Right? And if you keep taking them just to build the same house, so you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You, he won. His goal was to perpetuate the design of his monolithic, institutions, and he won. Mm-mm. You know, he tricked you. into reproducing his nightmare for him with his own tools. Holy shit. I guess he told you to go fetch. I guess he told you to go pick him some cotton. I guess that's what he told you. I guess he told you to shove the log in with one hand while doing it, upside down while doing cartwheels, right?
Yeah, wild shit.
See, he won. He won. Yeah. So, anyway, like that. But anyway, so I'm glad that she bothered you. Because I was like, no, we're doing this right now. Okay, doing this. I hope you're here. You're here, yay! You know. I'm gonna go ahead and I don't know what I'm gonna do right now. Eat the rest of my pizza, and I'm not sure what you. I can't peek over there to see what you're doing on your stream. How's it going over there?
I'm just
How's it going
chilling.
in?
I've just had you up on my little screen, watching people kind of filter in and out. I'm probably gonna raid out and go to sleep soon because I am tired.
I'm tired too. I haven't slept since it's been 27 hours now.
Oh, excuse me. Right on.
But I hope we get together soon. Talk about building spaces. We have to.
Definitely.
Also, do a little more of this, but then also we've decided we're gonna play like me and Spirit are gonna play like Diablo 3 online together because it's like the only thing I can play.
Right on.
So
I'll get Diablo 3 back again and we can play some Diablo
will
3.
ya? Oh man, that would be
Oh
awesome.
yeah.
That would be awesome. That's the only thing I can actually speed run my ass through that episode. I could look like a real game.
Hell yeah. All right. I'm
That would
definitely
be
down.
awesome. All right, shout outs to everybody, and everybody knows. But if there's anything last words you want to say or announcements, um, um, let me know for the VOD at least.
For sure. Nothing. I don't think I have anything going on right now. I quit my job, so I'm gonna be streaming full time for now. I'm gonna try to do 11 a.m. as well as my normal 10 p.m. streams now until I can just transition straight to 11 a.m. But yeah, doing more podcast stuff soon, and probably doing more music stuff soon. Doing more printing stuff. Um, Ethnostate to Black/Indigenous Liberation/Agency is the current liberal dog whistle. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That's
yeah,
what I meant. Exactly.
yeah.
Oh, it's a dog whistle. Speaking of dogs, right? Oh, gee. Is it a black dog or a white dog? Just asking for a friend.
What's up, Deculturation as well? I appreciate you following me and stuff. But
Okay, I'm gonna let you get some rest. I know, I feel like, I was like, I can't believe we had a back-to-back walkout. Uh-oh. I have
yeah,
to call tomorrow and say, y'all don't need nobody, do you? You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna have to negotiate some terms. I actually do, actually, because they didn't take me off. And I'm like, well, then, here we go. You know, gonna do.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna raid out and end now. We could talk for a minute after, but I'm gonna raid out and end now. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
I'll see you all Wednesday.